Hello, this is George the Antique Nomad. I am here with part 2 of what's hot and what's not in collecting. This is the part where we talk about things that are not as popular as they used to be, what the market is for them, and what do you do with these things now that you've got them and you have this information. So here we are, part 2, what's not so hot these days in antiques and collectibles.
As far as what's not so hot anymore, the computer has changed things dramatically. Computer buying and selling has raised the supply of things that we really once considered to be very scarce because we found out where they were. Examples, we have a Royal Copenhagen, the lady with the goat. We have the Yadro Modernist Madonna. And we have this piece, which is a Cebus, the girl in the shell, porcelain, made in New Jersey back in the 40s, 50s, 60s. 20 years ago, they all sold for over $100 each. Would anyone like to take a guess as to which one still would sell for over $100?
Madonna.
The Yadro. If any of them sell for over 100, she might be the one. The likelihood is that perhaps none of them will sell for over $100 these days. We discussed Hummel figurines, Royal Dalton ladies and mugs and those sorts of things. They're beautiful. They're really well done. They made a lot of them. A lot of people collected them, and there is just more of it than there are people to take them now. So the prices really have fallen as much as 2/3 from what they were in the 1990s.
Even a Yadro, that's a big name.
Some Yadro, yes, even the big names. Yeah, the Yadro have done a little better, partly because there's interest in other parts of the world besides here. A lot of Latin America collect Yadro. And the bigger and the fancier pieces, again, the best of whatever it is, even as markets go up and down, the things that are considered the best remain the best, but the overall supply and demand, that's what changes. Here's an example of why that happens. We were selling to Nordstrom's about 20 years ago. We were selling glass for their junior department. They started, when all the bright colors from the 60s came back into fashion, they started doing these decorations above the shelves, and they would put all of this sort of, this isn't a Blanco piece, but it's similar, another company in West Virginia. They were putting pieces like this above the shelves to capture the color of the fashions in the glass, and it was a big eye catcher to draw people across the stores. Well, I went to Grand Junction, Colorado, and there was one line of Blanco glass that was about this big, and it had little pebbles of glass stuck on the outside, and I'd been told that it was very rare. I went into a store in Grand Junction, and there was one in purple, and they wanted $45, and I thought, oh, Nordstrom's will pay $150 for that. I'll grab it. I went into the next store, and there was one in green. I grabbed it. I went into the next store, there was one in blue. I grabbed it. I went into the next store, and there was a purple one, a green one, and a blue one, and I thought, wait a second. Why am I finding these all over the place? These are really rare. So I asked the proprietress of the store, and she said, oh, we see those all the time. Some furniture store back in the 60s, when Blanco decided to get rid of that line, they just ordered all of them, and they said all of them here, and every time you bought a piece of furniture, they gave one away, and everybody in town has one. Well, then eBay came along, and all of a sudden, everybody in the world found out that there's this supply of these in Colorado, and the prices fell by half. That's why things are so different now, is because things that seemed rare to us because we only saw our little bit suddenly turned out, well, they're not rare everywhere, they're only rare where you are. On the other hand, we also found out what really is rare, and the prices on those things have shot way up.
Will they come back, or just?
I believe it will all come back. I believe that there will be a big, bright future for the antique business. I think we're just going to be in a period for the next few years where we have this situation where we've got baby boomers retiring early, not staying in their homes, downsizing. We've got to flush through all of that. It's going to take a few more years. When the dust settles, what will happen is that more time will have gone on, and people will look back, and I don't think people are going to be nostalgic about the stuff that we've been importing from China for the last 20 years. I think people will be nostalgic for things that their parents, their grandparents, things that were made in this country, things they feel a real attachment to, as opposed to just, I want stuff. And that's when I think it'll turn around. But I think that it might take a while for some categories to bounce back. There's things with eBay. You do have to be wise with eBay. You can't just assume that most of the time it works great, sometimes not so much. This is why towns like Snohomish are wonderful, because you've got a bunch of antique stores. You can walk in, you can feel it, you can see it, you can actually touch it, you know what it is, you can talk to somebody about it. And to me, I have to admit, that's why I still love antique shows. I love antique shops and malls, because you have that real personal connection to the people who are handling it, as opposed to I'm hitting a button and I hope it shows up and I hope it's what I thought it was and I hope they told me everything about it that I needed to know. There are other places that people sell now. Etsy is a big one for vintage items particularly. There are other sites that are specific to certain collecting categories. For example, a lot of people do their own websites and sell directly to people for that reason. You know, again, it is a little bit buyer beware out there now, because there isn't some place readily, easily you can take it back to if you have a problem. I like the stores too, and I think the stores will continue to thrive and exist because I think there's, first of all, a lot of gear that needs to go somewhere, so we need stores. And secondly, I watch other people who record on and do videos online about what they found. It's mostly younger people, and they show, oh, I went to the thrift store and look at this great thing I bought. I was so excited because this one young woman went to a swap meet and bought a whole box of Limoges dinnerware. We haven't been able to sell Limoges dinnerware in 10 or 15 years, and she was all excited. Look how beautiful it is. Wow, this is really great. I only paid $4 or $5 a piece for these pieces, which is a bargain. But this is how we get the new generation excited. And then she went and showed it on the computer and was telling everyone how great it was. And I thought, yeah, what's really great is your enthusiasm. That's what's really great to see. So I do think there's a future in it.
George, can I just ask you, how do you make most of your sales? Is it online or do you have a store?
No, I have to be honest. I still do it the old-fashioned way. The majority of my sales are made at antique shows and through the antique malls. I rent spaces at Star Center Mall in Snohomish, Epic Antique in Seattle, 2 stores in Centralia. I do shows here in the summertime. I go to Florida for 6 to 8 weeks in the winter and do shows down there. I'm actually known as the Antique Nomad now. That's my handle online because everybody sees me everywhere. And so by going a lot of different places and putting it in front of different people, we really are getting to we're getting to that place where we're really starting to see new interest, but it's more work than it used to be for sure. Real quickly, I wanted to mention also about the fact that the baby boom is starting to sell their items. Things that were made in the 80s and 90s celebrating 1950s icons, like all that Elvis stuff and all that Marilyn stuff, nobody wants those, I'm afraid. They want the real stuff from when Elvis and Marilyn were alive. That's very collectible and that will not cease, but the things made after someone is gone are generally never as valuable as the things made when they were still alive. Princess Diana passed, and then all of a sudden there were all these Princess Diana dolls and this and that and the other. None of them have kept their value in the marketplace. But the Beanie Baby that she was supposed to give out, of which they made a few hundred at the next appearance that she did not survive to make, is worth $10,000 for a Beanie Baby. So, we talked about limited editions and collector plates and things. I think that the main lesson there is buy it because you love it, and if you love it, keep it and enjoy it. And that's my bigger message to you about all of these things. Buy what you like, and if you like it and enjoy it, that's what the value is. And then if it happens to be worth something when you're done with it, that's great. You get more. Another thing is certain things just don't fit modern living. Certain styles, certain functions just are not what people are after anymore. They lack buyers because they no longer serve a purpose. Or they're too high maintenance. For example, we can sell sterling silver all day long. It's very hard to sell silver plate because if people are going to polish, they want it to be worth it, is the way they look at it. So they want something that's solid silver that has actually got some intrinsic value rather than plated silver where it's a chore and they have to do it over and over again and they don't know why. Another example in furniture, we have a 1920s rocker over here and a 1960s plain little lamp table over here. Which do you think is the more valuable?
Rocking chair.
The rocking chair and the 60s. The truth is they're probably both worth about $75 a piece or $100 a piece these days. The 1960s end table will sell in the next 2 weeks. The 1920s rocker will sell sometime in the next 2 years. That's the difference. Painted porcelain, silver plate hollowware, formal linens, cut glass, fine china, all those things that we filled the china cabinet with. They're beautiful things, they're lovely categories, but they're out of step with modern living. People are so non-traditional now. They're not formal. They sit in front of the TV to eat. They don't have big dinner parties anymore. Those are all things that are left over from a time when things really were different than they are. It's not that there aren't still people who appreciate them, and it's not that there isn't still value, but they don't go for the high values that they did 20 and 30 years ago, generally speaking. Here's some pieces from my inventory. I've got the glass pieces here. So there's these Victorian mantle lusters in the Mary Gregory style. There's this Bristol glass vase, hand-painted, and then there's this 50s modern vase with the crackle. Which of these three do you think is the oldest? The mantle vases. They look like the older pieces and they have age, but actually this Bristol glass vase is the oldest of all. This is going to date to about the 1870s. These were made in the United States and England. They're quite lovely. This is part of a pair. I just didn't open the other one up. Bristol glass has never been a good seller in all the years I've been in the antique business, even though it's genuinely old, because it was made in America and England at the same time. And the collectors in England say, well, the Americans copied it, so it's no good. And the Americans say, well, we want the ones made in America, and we can't tell which is which. So there's not a demand there. The mantle lusters are the most valuable of the three. They sell for probably $300 to $400 now. This piece, which is rainbow glass from West Virginia from about 1960, will sell much faster than these other pieces. This piece is probably worth about $75. It will sell at some point in the next few months. These other pieces could sit for several months because there just isn't as much demand, even though they're lovely and valuable. Depression glass is kind of the same thing. This Heisey Flamingo piece is a beautiful piece. I have $19 on it. I've had it at 3 shows. No one's even picked it up. We used to put this out for $35 and it sold immediately. Problem is most of it's in collections now, and so new collectors don't see enough of it out there to really be able to pick things up and make a collection. And the other thing with it is that these pieces, Heisey went out of business in 1957. There's not that many people who grew up with it anymore. And so we've seen a real change. Even depression glass, when I started in the business, was the most collectible thing other than coins and stamps. Now I would say the most collectible thing is probably pop culture memorabilia. So the market really has changed. One other category I wanted to talk about real quickly are clocks and watches, because we had several nice ones here today. We have 2 timepieces here. This was my great-grandfather's pocket watch. It is an Elgin from about 1910. And we have it sitting on this very kitschy, silly horse clock that is a commercially made piece that somebody then painted copper because they wanted a copper one rather than a gold one. The truth of the matter is these days, this watch will sell for about $95 and this clock will sell for about $75. That's how much the market has changed. We still see interest in clocks, but what they want are advertising clocks, things from the 1950s. They're almost impossible to fix, so finding one that runs is a trick. And so they've become very valuable because that's what's interesting to the new generation coming up. Beautiful old mantle clocks sell for about half what they used to do. So The market has changed, but again, the most wonderful and beautiful pieces of any category are still wonderful and beautiful and will be the most desirable. If you have a Philip Patek watch, for example, you're still looking at tens of thousands of dollars. So I guess the big question wrapping up is, what does this all mean to your collections and what you do next? And my advice is to look at your collections with an eye to what you really love, what really means something to you or is special to your family, and keep those pieces, and most important, have them out where you can use and enjoy them. Every time I have someone call and say, I have a set of china to sell, I say, do your kids have an interest in it? Well, no. Well, have you ever taken it out and used it around your kid? Well, they might break something. Well, of course they have no attachment to it if you never took it. If it's in a china cabinet locked away where no one can touch it, it's scary. And so if you want them to be interested, get the stuff out. When your family comes over, say, hey, I collect this stuff. What do you think of this? Trot it out. I had a gal who, her daughter didn't want any of her dishes. Her granddaughter came over. She had a little tea party with the granddaughter. They got out the special dishes. She said, yeah, my granddaughter chipped one of them. It was no big deal. By the end of the day, this was a special moment with grandma and the daughter. And when the daughter got older, the granddaughter got older, she wanted the set of dishes because they were part of her life. So if you want these things to stay with family, make them part of your life. And above all, consider, you asked about selling things. If there's items that are sitting in boxes, you're not using them anymore, you've offered them to family, offered them to friends, and other people who might have interest. If there's still pieces left over, then consider selling them on the computer or calling a dealer. And be realistic about where the market is today. Don't get caught up in what you paid for it, whether it was a little or a lot. Focus on the fact that we want these things to go on and have a life and go to people who really love them, and then they'll find their place. Be realistic about where the market is today, because what you paid in the past was for your enjoyment of the piece, for you to get to have it, for you to get to use it, and you got some of that value out of it just for having it. Antiques go up and down just like any other market. And in the event there is not an interested buyer, understand that you've had fun with them. You can donate them and benefit someone else that way.
Thank you for joining us, folks. And we hope that this look at what's hot and what's not in collecting today has been illuminating and helps you figure out what to do with your collections. And also lets you know that if you are a collector, this is a wonderful time to be collecting, because a lot of things that used to be hard to get are available again now. So enjoy your collections, enjoy collecting, and we'll see you next time. George the Antique Nomad at Periscope, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you now.